I have suggested 5 today. You do that, and I can guarantee you that the normalcy will, you will start sensing the objectively, substantively there, normalcy will begin to return to Manipur. This is serious issues. I'm saying, forget about innocent people of my state dying. If their lives are not important, at least think about your Raj Bhavan. Think about your army headquarters. You think that these guys will not attack them because you have some connection with them. So it's a serious national security. Forget about Kuki and Meitei. Think for a moment, what is that armed forces have been doing? And that particular question will answer how is that innocent woman was killed, how those people were, destroyed, their homes were destroyed by this bombing. Who's going to take responsibility? There are jammers in the hands of these security personnel. How is that you allow these drones to operate and bomb on the civilian places? Whose failure is this? I'm going to entertain any communally rooted political demand. No identity, exclusivist politics structure. Because remember that even the State Reorganization Committee had said very clearly, administrative structure banana ho, then it should be an administrative rational. It cannot be based on communal identity. Since weapon being used and then shooting down on the valley and the paddy fields and so on. And what the media had done that time, these are poor people with country-made local cartoons and all that. You have been bluffing all around and partisan roles. That's the saddest part. If the ST is an issue, why is it the other areas don't went up in flame, but only in Churachampur? I think the rest of us must be asking it.
I am here to talk to a member of parliament from Manipur. Joining me today is Dr. Bimol Akoijam, who's with me on Viewpoint. Very good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Arfida, for having me.
I want to begin, Dr. Bimol Akoijam, by asking you this question, that the Chief Minister made a very emphatic and a very optimistic statement, saying peace is on its way back to Manipur. Why is it that within days of such a statement, something completely opposite happens?
Sometimes I feel very sad for him because he makes a lot of statements, and very contradictory. If you follow from the day one when the crisis started, he makes a lot of statements, and you will see self-contradictory at times. And I feel sad for him. At one is he's the chief minister of my state, and he seems to have lost in touch with reality. It seems that what makes him think that if his assessment made him believe, or his advisors have told him that no peace is possible, then obviously what has happened has shown that he was not in tune with the reality on the ground. He ordered something for the bus to go to Churachampur and Senapati, some months back. Yes. And the troops of central government, such as CRPF and Assam Rifle, refused to comply with his order, and he's the CM of the state. And now that he admits, which I have raised this issue since June last year, that who is in charge of Manipur. And now he has come out saying that his power has been taken over by the government of India. Law and order is a state subject. So I think he doesn't seem to know that he is not completely in charge of the situation. He's only a small-time player in a larger game plan of the government of India. Okay. I know his power has been taken out and his order has not been followed. And yet he thinks
there is a mistrust. You are saying that it is not as if the whole of Manipur or its population actually has reposed their faith on the chief minister. There's a large section of the population.
I'm not saying that. There are people, different kinds of people have different attitude or obligations towards him. But I'm saying as the chief minister, he has been making a lot of statements, and at one level, we know that he himself has accepted and admitted that he hasn't the power. Law and order is not in his hand. But at the same time, he has not stood up. It is a constitutional power of the chief ministers, which has been taken over by the government of India without following constitutional procedures. He's still the chief minister of the state, and how come his power has been removed? Law and order is a state subject, and the chief minister, he himself is the home minister.
Very
And now
interesting what
that's
you're
what
saying, because by
the
that
idea.
logic, there should be president's rule. If that is the case,
It
what
is,
you're
I think
saying,
if
by
there is
that
a
logic,
president rule,
why is
there
there
is
even a chief minister then?
no. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said unconstitutional procedures. If there is a
Okay.
precedent rules, we know that the central government is in charge of the situation here, or even when you formally invoke Article 355, and
Yeah.
the Home Minister or the Union Home Ministry has appointed the this Kuldeep Singh, the security advisors, or the DG has been changed under Article 355, then we know that then also officially the government of India is in charge of Manipur. But the
Yeah.
point is that it is not done in that constitutional fashion. He was instructed by Delhi that, appoint so and so as DGP, appoint so and so as the security advisors, and he followed. And now he's saying that it's not in my hand; it's been taken over by them. But the appointment was issued through the government of Manipur. This is,
So, yes.
kind of
So,
a
so it's convenient then. Then what happens is the central government remains absolved of responsibility. Law and
absolutely,
order remain
absolutely
the state
right.
subject. The chief minister is made the scapegoat. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I have
As
said.
it
He is
is.
the willing
Huh.
scapegoat. He is the facade, and that every blame is
Okay.
on him, and he's willingly accepted. And the funny thing is that when we point out like this and criticize the government of India and led by Mr. Modi and Amit Shah,
Yeah.
he comes and jumps in and criticize us and said, "Why? How dare you criticize the prime minister? He's in charge of the state," he says. 24/7, where he's monitoring us. All that I have been doing as a CM is under the consent and the advice of the Modi ji and Amit Shah ji. All this thing he said. So he is a chief minister whose power has been taken over unconstitutionally. He says it. He admits. His cabinet colleagues admit, and then he don't protest against that. And when people like us as a citizens, and we said that federal structure has been eroded, and who is in charge of Manipur? Is it the union government? Why you're putting up this as a facade, and so forth? And entire blame is on him. And all these things we try to point out, but again he jumps and defends the government of India. And the Manipur people are unhappy with the central security forces. They're saying that they are siding with one community, Kuki community, and so and so has been doing it, and people have been complaining. And who are these security forces? 60,000 people, despite those deployment, the violence continues for 15 months. And we know that the security forces are under the government of India. This is the central security forces. This is the prime minister's home minister, defense minister. But if you
So
criticize,
then what you're saying is the security forces are also powerless. 60,000 is a very large number for a state
that
like
is
Manipur.
why I have been saying,
They are also powerless.
No, Afida, if you have followed, there are two things involved here. That's why I said, leave the chief minister. He is the facade.
Okay.
जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट कहेगा वो करेगा. He can't even stand up against deprivation of his own power as a constitutional authority of a state. So leave him aside. Let's discuss about the government of India, what they have been doing.
Yeah.
So 60,000 troops, they have been deployed. So despite that, violence continues. And I have argued elsewhere some months back, I have said this.
Yeah.
Manipur is one of the most militarized states in this country. And across the country, if you do a study, you will find out that normally the composition of armed police to civil police in all the state, civil police is a larger segment of the police force in each state. The armed police is always less than 10%. It doesn't hit the two-digit number, except Kashmir and some states in Northeast, and Manipur is one of them, where we have more armed policemen than the civil police. It's already a militarized state. In such a state, just give me 1 minute, I'll just explain why I'm saying that. The point is, UpSpy is there.
Yeah.
It's already in operation. UpSpy has been brought in the name of law and order, public order, and all these things to be tackled by, because the civilian has failed to do it. So you need the aid of civil authority. So army is already there. Many of these areas where these problems have been occurring, violence, is under the UpSpy. And two, in non-UpSpy areas also you have many central deployment, including army units. Companies are there. So each and every square centimeter is controlled by many of these troops, 60,000 plus central forces. Under
True.
the erstwhile, CRPC, when it was still in force, it was only changed this July. Under CRPC 131, any threat to public order and law and order, every army unit is supposed to respond without the permission of the civilian authority under that particular provision. So that means, don't say that they don't have power. There is already an authorized. It is the will of the officers. Now, the second question comes in. Despite AFSPA, despite CRPC, which allows them to respond to law and order situation, why did they do it? I think the confidence was not given to the officers by the higher of authorities, which will take you to the political executive. That is the government of India. So the blame must go to them. And despite that, look at what happened on 1st September and then following day in the night as well.
There was a retired police officer's house that was burned.
Let me complete this. You will understand what is the situation. Leave the chief ministers. I've already told you.
I think retired police officer's house was burnt. House of a police officer was burnt.
Look at this. The drones were flying for 7 hours and then again come back in the night to bomb civilian places. You have there are jammers in the hands of these security personals. How is that you allow these drones to operate and bomb on the civilian places? Whose failure is this? Now, look, you understand what there are jammers.
Yes.
You can, demobilize and, immobilize these drones. That technology is with the security forces. Despite that, it was allowed for 7 hours and followed by in the night. So right from the day one, last May onwards, the question remains, what has been the effect of deploying 60,000 troops? With all these power and
you're saying something very serious. You are saying something very serious because you are alluding to complicity. No, you are saying that
I'm not even going to jump to that. I'm only going to say that
because
why this has been allowed to happen.
Have turned a blind eye. Yeah.
Now the second is, I'm saying it's two layer. I've said it. One is that they have the power. In terms of I've told you how they are supposed to respond if the public order or the law and order is being threatened in the area of operation, both under AFSPA or erstwhile CRPC. They didn't do it, and my assessment is that those officers were not given, it seems, by the political authority. So they were afraid. Or there's something, where they don't want to take.
Who is in cahoots with whom? Please spell it out for us.
That is why I think, let's understand.
Would you elaborate? Would you spell it out so that we have a better understanding?
Let me
for my
explain.
viewers, let me tell them, AFSPA is Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which Dr. Bimol Akoijam was referring to.
Let them come up and say that they don't have a power under erstwhile CRPC 131 to respond to this kind of a situation. And let me again remind them that in the age of civil power, they have come in the name of AFSPA. In spite of all this presence, AFSPA or non-AFSPA, those officers and the troops were supposed to respond. They did not. Now the question comes in, either each of these officers did not have that moral courage to respond, or because they were scared of something. And that, for 1 year or 15 months, they have been allowed to be like this, points our finger to the higher up, particularly the political authority. If there is a clear-cut policies and will of the government of India, I don't think people have lost life. I mean, it would have been controlled within 1 week. And 60,000 people would not have lost their homes. Not only that, after they left, the property would have been still intact if the law and order is in their hand. And all this claim of foreign elements, others would have been taken stern action against it. Because India is one of the most powerful countries, and you have 60,000 troops in an area which is only 22 square kilometers something. The population is like a district in Delhi. And 60,000 is a huge troop. You don't even go to war with 60,000
Let me rephrase this question for you. So for our better understanding, you are saying that there is no dearth of troops. There is no dearth of security surveillance. It is not possible that you do not have intel inputs about a drone attack. There is
Absolutely.
there is lack of political will and intent. So by that logic, stretching your argument, can I say that you are trying to somehow also say that the authorities at the center are siding with one side and turning a blind eye to the other? Is that ultimately what you're saying?
I think that they are complicit in this through their inaction. I have been saying this for months. The inaction itself is an action. And I'm raising this question today and on a national media. Ask this question. If the jammers are there already, how is that the drone were allowed for 7 hours and then come back in the evening, forget about the intel failure? You already see this drone attack. How is that you don't sprung into action? What happens if that drone comes, will not even take 1 minute to come to Raj Bhavan and drop, or the AIM sector, the army headquarters? What happens then? So it's a serious national security. Forget about Kuki and Meitei. Think for a moment, what is that armed forces have been doing? And that particular question will answer how is that innocent woman was killed, how those people were, destroyed, their homes were destroyed by this bombing. Who's going to take responsibility for this?
How would you respond to the argument that sometimes the security forces exercise restraint so that things don't escalate?
To take down the drone with a jammer is a restraint. Restraint for what? Just think, Afrida, this argument. Restraint for what? That you allow the drone to attack because you are restraining yourself? What kind of argument is that? And interestingly, to the best of my knowledge, has the Home Ministry came out with a statement? Has the Defense Ministry came out with a statement? Forget about the PMO. That is in one breath style for a long, long time. Has the other two? This is a serious issue. I'm saying, forget about innocent people of my state dying. If their lives are not important, at least think about your Raj Bhavan. Think about your army headquarters. You think that these guys will not attack them because you have some connection with them? Is that?
You see, Dr. Bimol Akoijam, there are Kuki leaders who are saying Meitei militia is powerful because you have a CM who's a Meitei. So on one hand, you have that argument, and then you have a lot of the community from the Meitei community saying this is Kuki militants and they are aligned with the security forces. Now, we as observers don't know whom to believe. It seems unless the two communities decide to reconcile, nothing can help. It seems as if...
No. I think this, let's frame it properly. Forget about Kukis and Meiteis. Forget about CM for a moment. I'm only fundamentally raising this question. Isn't it destroying the trust of the security forces and police? Is it good for the state? When I say state, it's not Manipur. The state of India as defined in Article 12. We have a legitimate institution called the Indian state with a constitution, with a parliament, with an army, with a police, with a judiciary. Is this state, I'm asking, you have this very crucial institution called the army, the paramilitary forces, and the police. When these things have been jeopardized and the trust deficit has been created, and you still want to talk about Kukis and Meiteis, the thing should have been that we cannot afford. I have said this for months before. I have said on national media that there's this trust deficit and then institutions should not be jeopardized. Indian Army, the paramilitary forces, and the police forces. When you jeopardize state institutions, you are threatening the very integrity of the state itself, the Indian state. And they should have done something in order to deal with this, how to do with this psychological war of trying to build the trust of the people. Instead, all these authorities, this is something that all the professional army guys and IPS officers must think about it. What have you done to regain this trust of the public? Instead of saying...
The situation is getting serious also because there are now highly complex high-tech weapons that are now seen in the specter of violence. And I think you've also raised this, that these are not weapons that are country-made pistols or rifles that the common people are having access to. Where are these weapons coming from? You also said that even security personnel do not have these sort of sophisticated weaponry. This is a very, very serious matter.
No, Afrida, let me just say, you understand first thing, I think this is what we have been making mistake for all these months. You jeopardize the institution like the army, the paramilitary and police. We should know that you are threatening the state. State Mane, not Manipur. The state, the Indian state, because these are legitimate institutions. So it is the duty of the officers commanding things or the bureaucrats who are running, as well as the political executive, should have been worried. And they should have done something to regain. But instead, some troops comes out with videos blaming one communities. What you are doing it, ultimately you end up saying that people will accuse you are part with this cookie group, you are part with Meitei group. That is what has happened. Okay, that's the part. In your second question, you have just asked me about sophisticated weapons. We say
Yes.
not only about the looted arms. You think about that, because there are weapons which is not even used by Indian armed forces. Normally what happens is that the army has a rifle, standard rifle, then they phase it out, it goes to the paramilitary, then the local police. SLR is one, we know that. Then you have INSAS is gone. Now this is another rifle, especially in Western sector, you have it. But you understand that M16 is not a standard rifle used by Indian armed forces. But M16 is being used, and these video recordings have appeared months ago, not today. This is like 8-9 months ago, I saw the video of M16's weapon being used and then shooting down on the valley and the paddy fields and so on. And what the media had done that time, these are poor people with the country-made local cartoons and all that. You have been bluffing all around and partisan roles. That's the saddest part.
But what does that indicate? Where are these weapons coming from? Are you indicating there is a foreign hand in it? Are the neighboring countries? It's a border state. It's a border state, and there has been a history of strife with elements across the border as well.
Absolutely right. You see that, there's illegal arms in that sector, Thailand, Laos, this Southeast area. We all know. As to the weapons are coming in from there, but you said it, these guys have the looted arms and these are cartoons and a local made gun. And that is my problem. Right from the officials to the media, we have messed up. Manipur is paying the price. You will say that it's your problem. Manipur is on problem. You guys have a problem. Prime Minister saying that, eternally they have a conflict. Pehle se bhi tha. You realize that that's the same thing the colonial thinkers and policymakers have done to India. They think that Hindu-Muslim is inherent in Indian ethos. It's only the Indian post-colonial scholar who started arguing that no, that was a product of the processes of colonial state. So ethnicity and ethnic conflict, the so-called conflicts, are
deliberately stoked. You are saying, is this animosity being deliberately stoked? Because from what we understand and from the reports from the ground, it seems the Kuki community would now not settle for anything less than territory which they will administer. They are not willing to settle for anything less. Is that a correct observation? Because it seems they are angered by the CM's statement where he says normalcy will return, and they do not accept his authority. Is there truth in this, that now probably the only solution or resolution will be if there are separate administrative territories between these communities?
Afrida, I'll tell you two things here. I have been said, and which you just give me one time so that I can give you a little more things which I have not stated before. First thing first, there has been an ethno-nationalist mobilization called Zalingam, a nationalist project of the Kukis. Okay, yeah. And which cuts across Bangladesh, Myanmar, and India. That mobilization has an image, and some of them, not all of them, some of them think that having an autonomous area within India first, and some autonomous region within Bangladesh and within Myanmar is like a halfway home. You understand? before you achieve the final goal, and that has to be their kind of a project. And so there is an international dimension to the problem of these so-called tribal aspirations, if you think so. And Manipur has a historically manufactured through colonial practices and so on. There are inter-community estrangement, and many of their grievances have never been addressed, whether it's real or perceived. Differential development, for example. There was no objective effort to address these issues. So we have a historical thing. And over this particular, fractured or the estrangement, this nationalist mobilization has come into play. That is one of the issues where you have this problem. Okay, remember this. Whether it is whenever the government of Manipur tries to bring in something, that there was the 3 laws trying to decide who is a citizen of Manipur and who's not outside in 2015. The same place, Churachampur, went up in flame, but not in other tribal areas. Ukhrul, Tamenglong, nothing happened in 2015. Now this time, in the name of protest against some judgment, which is partly faulty, but has been blown out of proportion and misinterpreted as if a court can direct the inclusion of ST communities or something of that kind, which is absolutely not true. You have a different process. Court cannot do that. But you have a protest, okay, against that court judgment. I call it as a pretext. Why? Because again, Churachampur area went up in flame. And nothing happened in the other tribal areas where the within court cookie groups are there. So we need to understand these processes. Along with this, I've been saying this, I've been observing this. There has been an aggressive, these different aspirations among different sections of the population is there in Manipur. But again, look at some of these things. Why this has happened in 2015 when Manipur People's Bills were brought in. If it is against a tribal, why is that other tribal areas did not go up in flame? If the ST is an issue, why is it the other areas don't went up in flame, but only in Churachampur? I think the rest of us must be asking it. And I have been one of those guys who've been arguing if there are genuine grievances, it must be addressed. But through an objective assessment, not communal discourses. And 2, I have also appealed that, in Manipur is no longer the kingdom, and the Meitei needs to reinvent themselves. We cannot have that imperial structures and his ideas cannot be used. We have to reimagine ourselves in modern democratic republican ethos and objective to deal with us. And every community must be able to live like every individual with a sense of dignity and well-being. And if there are grievances around that one, we can address those things objectively. There could be committees formed, assessment done. We can work together. It didn't happen.
There are assessments done. There are agreements. For example, there was an agreement with the Mar community, with the Métis on the 1st of August, right? Between the Métis and the Hamar community.
And that I'm talking about the general grievances.
No, I'm saying those reconciliatory processes have also not worked out. I want to ask you, what will it take now? What will it take? You represent Inner Manipur. Already the cleansing has happened. There's a distinction and clear demarcation of the Métis areas and the Kuki areas as we speak, right?
Let me come to that one.
How will people return home? How will there be an intermingling?
Let me explain this. I'm saying something about this. What gets complicated is the drug dimensions, the poppies and illicit drugs. What happened is that Golden Triangle, the area has shifted according to UN report on Myanmar side, not on the other side of the Laos and Thailand side. So obviously spill over on the eastern side of Manipur. So there is a drug, and some observers believe that the drug economy in Manipur runs in thousands of crores. So there is a dimension of this conflict because of the control or maybe possibly on dealings with this among many of the local players.
Right.
That cannot be ruled out.
So you're saying the crackdown on the drugs, the drug crackdown.
This is one.
Yeah.
This is one part. But the crackdown, it should not be rhetoric. There have been big players being arrested, sort of red-handed caught red-handed by the authorities, and they got scot-free. And that even drivers of some politician is supposed to be dealing with 28 crores and crores of rupees. Is it possible? So you get free. If you are genuinely cracking down, it should come out in your accent. So there are issues around this. But there's definitely a drug dimension to the present crisis. That's why they said it's not ending. And last but not the least, but there is also some people suggested that the government of India is trying to play some strategic game to deal with the armed groups and so on, and they have misfired. This is, you can read in local newspapers and so on, the commentators who have known ins and out of Manipur system as observers, they have been commenting on this. It's not me. So coming back to your questions, given all these factors, I noticed something. Just as Churachandpur went up in flame in 2015, as well as this time, not in other tribal areas, though the grievances is in the name of the tribals. This is, along with this, I saw none of these MLAs, especially from this one who are demanding separate administration, have ever called for peace and calm, I haven't heard. Right from the day one, they went on ethnic cleansing, cookies have been ethnic cleansing, we can't live together. Separate administration is not a product of this violence. It has been there for a long, long time. And I believe that some of these people have taken advantage of this violence, and either this is manufactured through that angle, and now you come to the more you are deepen the divide and you say we can't live together. And I have been saying, as an Indian citizen, jab tak Indian citizen banke rahoge, then you cannot say that our citizen belonging to a particular religion, linguistic group cannot live together with another.
Absolutely. And for the first time, I'm seeing someone talking as a Manipuri, as an Indian, because, whoever you speak to speaks either as a Kuki or a Meitei. In fact, I have seen national channels revealing BJP Kuki MLA, that way. And by the way,
even I've been told a Manipuri, they will call me as Meitei academics, Meitei MP.
I know, but at least you're trying not to speak only as representative of one community. I appreciate that. I want to ask you that every single person, every leader is speaking as a Kuki or a Meitei. Isn't that a dangerous trend as well? Because I heard a BJP MLA speak against Biren Singh. So there is a mistrust at various levels. And the entire state crossing party lines are now becoming, divided along community lines. How will that bridge? How will that gap be bridged?
Let me share this. I have said it more clearly before. Also, I will repeat how to go about as far as I see it. But one thing, we recognize these problems. I told you that whether the armed forces leaders or the leaders, Indian political leaders or the media, all of us have succumbed to this dichotomous way, and then trying to prop up. I have done a study on some mainstream Indian media, how they have represented.
Yes, I read that. I read your
against
study.
all the ethical standards set up by the PCI. And if anybody wants to go against a study, they have to go to the same rigorous screens of methods and the theories and the data that we have collected and compiled. It took 8 months to work on that one, and they have to do it. It's a systematic, using all media studies, methodology and theories. You want to ridicule it, you have to do it through the same rigor. And I've done it. This is where we have faulted ourselves. As a country, as a responsible citizens, we have failed. And two, look at this government. This is BJP government, and 7 of them are from BJP out of this 10 Kuki, within quote Kuki. It's a very controversial term. That's why I keep on saying Kuki. Some people say we are not Kuki. You should include Mar. You should say Joe. So it is hyphenated. You say keep on shifting. But broadly, for convenience sake, I call Kuki at the moment. And some of these people are saying that union territory chahiye, separate administration. This is the cabinet minister, and within the same, you also have the chief minister who says we will not give. All right. So my idea has been that please, Prime Minister, call all your BJP legislators in Delhi, sit down together and thrash it out so that at least government has one voice on the issue. They don't have. nor the violence could be controlled by them. They have been allowing that. So my only suspicion is that some of the armed Kuki groups was promised by BJP that they will give their demand if they help them in election, which is all over in the media. You can check it. Not only that, one of these rebel leaders have said in an affidavit this thing. That means, on the other hand, you are propping up one gentleman as a savior of Maitai, another as a savior of Kuki, and the government is fractured. There is no one voice in the government who is ruling over the conflict. And how do you expect the peace to return? So I think the Prime Minister should have called. That's why I keep on asking that Prime Minister should call all these people of his legislature. That's the first step. Anybody who is not mentioning this are just thinking wishful thinking. First, the Prime Minister must ensure that his political party, his own legislator who running the government of Manipur, should sit together so that at least they have a common voice, so that the government is rescued. And then second, our armed forces and the police and the bureaucracy must be revived. Do whatever to strengthen. You can't work on community lines. State institution cannot be. Even army officers is going to say that I'm not going to follow this command of this major because he comes from Kuki or he comes from Maitai. That organization will collapse. If an
but that is what is happening. Isn't that the sad reality
today? That's why I said it's a danger.
Everyone comes under that lens.
That's what I said, the route ahead. Forget about the talk among community first. You ensure that these government structures are rescued first. Okay. And who is able to do that? Obviously, the government of India. And मुंह से नहीं, simply बात नहीं करना. It should be seen on the ground substantively that the 60,000 present is felt. Remember that one of this BJP MLA, son-in-law of the CM himself, has written saying that 60,000 troops have been mute spectator. He is a BJP MLA, Chief Minister ka son-in-law hai. So I am not the only one who is talking about this.
Chief Minister's son-in-law has written to the Prime Minister to withdraw forces, saying they are absolutely powerless and absolutely ineffective, which is the tragedy of the situation today.
They should have done it. Then it should not be like a show. But a genuine person will be asking, rather than withdrawing, said that let the state's presence be felt on a substantive sense on the ground. Let the violence be controlled by them.
Yes.
And this is the first two I've said, making sure that the government becomes one voice, because it is under the same party. Modi is a very powerful man. And two, do whatever you have to do to ensure that the government structures, institutions are rescued. These are two things for way ahead. I'm suggesting very clearly. Until and unless you do that, all talks of peaceful talk here and there is nonsense. And three, let me complete. The government of India must come out very clearly that in this country, which is multicultural, multi-religious, multi-linguistic, no political demand based on communal, sectarian ideology, identity politics can be satisfied, because it will open up a Pandora's box. So they should firmly say, we are all for revamping administration for better administration, for better distribution of wealth and power to the people. So decentralization and all of them is okay. But no, we will never entertain a communally rooted project of an exclusivist identity of my community.
Your suggestion is, if there is a separatist tendency, if there is a separatist sort of movement, that has to be crushed with an iron hand. You are advocating a top-down approach.
I think you have missed it. I've said three things.
I heard that. But primarily you are saying a top-down approach, right? Somebody at the center has to take responsibility.
Let me complete. I have only four things to say. I've said three. First, Prime Minister must ensure that the government, his troops, speaks in the same language. Do whatever you have to do. Third, making sure that your bureaucracy, the armed forces, the police, works like an state institutions. Do whatever you have to do it. Temporary measures you wanted to take it. Not in terms of cracking down. If you think that, injecting officers from outside in the police force, reorganize them, and then supplemented by, central police organizations, and ensuring that the police is being sort of rescued as an institution, and the armies remove those, units who have been there for a long time and you have complained. Whether it is right or wrong is not an issue. That deficit must be addressed by the armed forces and then rescue. And third, I said, is that the government must politically announce that we are not going to entertain any communally rooted political demand. No identity, exclusivist politics structure. Because remember that even the State Reorganization Committee had said very clearly, administrative structure banana ho, then it should be an administrative rational. It cannot be based on communal identities. Fourth, along with this is not one after another. The fourth step is try to involve certain kind of civil society level dialogue. Let's start. And some of the major issues about, say, we said, illegal immigrations, you have to put drugs. These two particularly must be addressed without demonizing communities. These two issues, I'm repeating it, without demonizing communities, must be addressed. There are serious issues about illegal immigration that has been raised for a long, long time. And that must be done. You know, people are playing games with NRC. Is the Prime Minister ready for NRC? He has said on the floor, remember that video recording where he says, no, we are not going to do. In fact, I'm saying to you for the first time, I raised a question in the Lok Sabha, which is called short notice question. But for it to be answered, it must be approved or allowed by the Speaker and the concerned minister. It was not allowed. I've asked whether the government of India is willing and planning to implement NRC in the state of Manipur. That question was disallowed. I've been raising, if the government of India, the Prime Minister itself is not very sure on NRC, and there are so many opinions on NRC, but I have been saying, call it by any other name, whether you are reluctant on NRC's name, whether including the Prime Minister Modi, which the state leaders are saying that, is Congress ready? Is Congress ready? Even the Prime Minister is not ready. You know, after listening to this, anybody who have heard Prime Minister saying about NRC, please play it out, so that these people who are playing games in back homes can understand. And I have raised this issue in Parliament, which was disallowed.
Right. You have explained.
Now, I think that's what I think I've just stated. Last one, these issues, two issues, drug is a serious issue.
Yeah.
But you know, because so many dimensions and people are implicated, and you will have a tough time. You know, blaming communities is not going to solve the problem. I said, without demonizing communities, one must handle this issue, two issues. These are the four issues that we need to deal with it. Okay. Civil society organization must be raised. Peace talk can be initiated. Not even negotiation, at least dialogue should start. So these are the four layers. So let me conclude. Prime Minister ensuring his government speaks in one voice. Make sure that state institutions are recovered, especially police and the armed forces. And third, you can deal with this, clearly government of India says that no demand on communal basis because India cannot afford. Fourth, you initiate a civil society dialogue. Along with that, fifth, I said, if you add these two issues, it must be objectively addressed without demonizing communities. These five are the way ahead, and I hope, I have said these 3-4 things before. Yes. I have said repeatedly.
You have explained, you have explained the dimensions, I think, very, very comprehensively, and I'm sure my viewers would have benefited from this because it's a multi-layered issue. It cannot be looked at from one single perspective, like you have given us an understanding of the drug trafficking issue, of the weapons issue, and of the migrants issue as well, where the union government has tremendous amount of responsibility to handle it in that sensitive manner. And I take that sentence from you as a big takeaway, without demonizing communities, because that is only going to aggravate. That is not going to help anyone. Dr. Bimol,
some people want that, Afrida.
Go ahead.
Some people want to divide. And know what happened is divide and rule. Manipuris love to talk about it. We have been divide and rule, but majority of us have fallen victim to this trap. You know, the more deepen you have aggravated anything. That's why I said, don't blame the community as a whole, blame the elites and their divisive politics. Remember Gandhiji once said, we're not fighting against the British people, we're fighting against British rule over us.
Yeah.
That's a distinction that I maintain, and no demonizing, but take the objective issues objectively and deal with it. And so harping about certain things, including NRC, when I told you, the Prime Minister himself says he's not ready. And there are complications around that one, and say, oh, Congress MP.
So if the political will were to be in place, what is the time frame that you think normalcy can return?
If you do this
how
process,
long a project will this be?
I think one more thing, you remember this. If these steps, if you take it, it calls for a firm stand by the government of India, an honest one, a genuine concern for the suffering of the people of the state. Simply because it's in the periphery, you throw it out. For 75 years, Northeast India has suffered from this exclusion. बच्चे आके दिल्ली में बोलते हैं, we are Indian, don't treat us like a Chinese. History में जाके बोलते हैं, मणिपुर कहाँ है? Nobody knows. It was complained during my father's time in the 50s and 60s, and it continues today. Our children have been looked upon with a particular lens. These are all familiar things during the colonial periods, how the colonizers and colonized lived. All these things, you have been pushed in the periphery for a long time. If you really want to build a nation, we still require to address these issues. So Manipur is a peripheral state. So from your psychology as well as physical locations, don't treat it like that. If you run national
Mindsets have to change. Mindsets have to change.
Approach a national government. I have suggested 5 today. You do that, I can guarantee you that the normalcy will, you will start sensing the objectively, substantively there, normalcy will begin to return to Manipur. But the hurt and the anger and distrust has aggravated because we have allowed it to happen for so long. Like any disease, if you have not intervened timely, it gets complicated. True. So the hurt in others will require a different kind of meditative approach, healing approaches, multi-layered. It will take time. But that process, substantive level, you take these 5 states and you will probably begin to sense, not even 6 months, within 3 to 4 months, you will begin to sense that normalcy returns. So ultimately, it is the will of the government of India and the rest of the country to realize, just because we are physically located at a periphery, and you have not been taught about our history and so on, do not think that 60,000 people living in camps and homeless, 200 people collapsing and public, intercommunity relationship, you should not be watching from a distance. You should know that as part of India.
Do you know when Manipur is owned up? When Mary Kom wins a medal. That is the time.
Yeah, that's what. One so patronizing, it told me that we have given. The funny thing is they don't even realize what is patronizing. One colleague of mine in the floor of the house said, "We have given you Sport University. We have given you this." I'm sorry, I should not be speaking about it. It's okay.
And Manipuri women have made the country proud in so many global platforms. I come from the Northeast too. And I share your pain about the tyranny of distance. And I take your point about how the lack of focus and priority has been a consistent issue, not just with Manipur.
I have taught for 30 years in the national capital, 30 plus years. Yes. I have taught students from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Nagaland. Lot of them are teaching in many universities across this country and abroad. That's my contribution to the national life. But I cannot accept that I should exist perpetually as a peripheral entity, as an insignificant, including my people's own tragedy can be sidelined and watched for 15 months. I don't think so. And I said historically, it will have a consequence if we don't take it seriously. Please take note of this. We'll have a serious historical consequences of what has happened. So better we intervene sooner the better. And I wish our prime ministers, though he belongs to a different party, my leader Rahulji has very honestly, calmly requested that the PM should visit Manipur. Remember that some people are playing that as if Rahulji is playing politics. No, don't think. It's so good that a national leader is coming and showing concern for us. It should be taken, and he is simply appealing to the Prime Ministers, please visit. And I am saying that, though he belongs to a different party, if anybody in this country think that Manipur is part of India, as it is the 19th state of this union, though it has its existence before the Indian Constitution itself, that it existed was recognized by the Indian Constitution in Schedule 1. You should remember that. Armed forces, academics, culture, sports, even though it's a tiny, small state, we have contributed immensely to the national life. And even as a single example, there are hundreds of people like me teaching across the country from that state. We have shaped young minds in this country. So leave these.
And the hurt that you talk about also comes when you see the Prime Minister is visiting Brunei, is visiting Singapore, and extending solidarity with the Indian diaspora, whereas his very own are still in refugee camps. Let's take
it this way, as I talk to you, past is past. I have suggested through you 5, and I request with folded hand to the Prime Minister through your channel, please look into this 5 proposal that I placed in front of him.
I hope this interview is...
and I'm sure our party and our leader will be supporting if he does that.
I'm hoping that this interview will be shared extensively, Dr. Bimol Akoijam. In fact, we have comments, and as I close the interview, let me read out what viewers are saying. That is Mayang Lambam Indira, who's saying present crisis is designed by India government with a hidden agenda. That's the viewer's point of view. Others have also, of course, given a thumbs up to the interview, and of course, has wished Manipur all the best. Few comments here, but I'm sure as this interview now goes out and gets published, I'm sure your points, the 5 points that you made, we are going to take a note of this as well. We are going to also have this on our other publications of Free Press Journal. Thank you so much, Dr. Bimol Akoijam, for joining us today on Viewpoint. Have a nice evening.
Good. Thank you so much, Afrida.